Welcome back. This is The Full View on SABC News. Thank you so much for staying with us. Now, Business for South Africa, B4SA, is an alliance of South African volunteers working with the South African government and other social partners, as well as various stakeholders, to mobilise business resources and capacity to combat the COVID-19 pandemic. The organisation says it expects more court action this year on vaccine mandates. Joining us now to discuss this is Martin Kingston, the chairperson for B4SA. Mr. Kingston, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Full View.
Afternoon, Simpiwe.
Now, before we get deeper into this conversation, first of all, what's Business for South Africa's stance on mandatory vaccinations?
Well, what we know is that vaccinations is an absolutely critical intervention to be able to arrest the spread of the pandemic and, more importantly, to prevent serious illness and indeed death, to open up the workplace and to ensure that we can return to a normal level of working as quickly as practically possible. So we're certainly in support of any steps that can be taken to roll out the vaccination program as quickly as possible across society, and business has got a critically important role to play in that.
Okay, Mr. Kingston, we seem to have lost you. Are you still there with us? Hi, Mr. Kingston, are you back with us?
I am with you. Can you hear me?
Okay, great. We had lost you there for a second. Now, we've seen Australian authorities issue out an order to deport world tennis great and had his visa revoked for the second time. Is this likely, to start a precedent, for months to come with regards to mandatory vaccinations?
Well, Simpiwe, we think that this is actually a global phenomenon. We can see it wherever we look. It's happening across the world. There are many countries that are looking at the possibility of introducing vaccine mandates, and indeed many sectors of the economy across South Africa as well as more broadly worldwide. And there are many people equally who feel that their individual rights are being infringed, that they shouldn't be required to vaccinate. And our position is that indeed we shouldn't in any way require people to vaccinate, but then they must be excluded from an environment where they put either themselves or indeed those around them at risk. And that is indeed our primary focus, as I said, to prevent the spread of the virus on the one hand, and to ensure that we can open up the workplace as quickly as possible without in any way putting individuals in the workplace or those who come into the workplace at risk. So what we've seen happening in Australia, we're sure is a sign, unfortunately, of things to come, as increasingly we'll see a polarization between those who've been vaccinated and those who do not want to be vaccinated.
Well, while all employers will need to follow the processes prescribed in law, what is it that companies first need to consider? I mean, what's the rationale for companies before imposing these mandatory vaccination rules?
Well, Simpiwe, in fact, in South Africa, we already have a set of regulations, occupational health and safety regulations, which impose a requirement on employers to ensure that they can guarantee the safety, security, and of course that means the well-being as well of their workforce. And that includes, by law, an assessment of any COVID-related risks. In fact, companies with a workforce above a certain size have to have COVID compliance officers to ensure that all the protocols are indeed in place. So it is clear that we already have a set of systems and procedures which any company needs to observe. We think that those need to be tightened up. There needs to be some level of consistency and alignment. Most importantly, that every employer needs to engage with their individual employees on the basis of the science that's available, to be able to persuade them on the merits of the cases, the advantages, the benefits, and indeed the merits of vaccination, as I said, not just for them, but for their families, for their associates, and for those that are with them in the workplace. Many companies, including Old Mutual, Standard Bank, MTN, and of course the leader, I suppose, was Discovery, have already started those processes and have had very significant successes in terms of driving up the level of vaccination amongst their workforce. In the case of Discovery, I think it's now at some 96%, and they will continue, I'm sure, to persevere with the balance who still need to be vaccinated. but they will be reticent and reluctant to allow them into the workplace if they put either themselves or indeed their colleagues at risk without being vaccinated. So we're going to now have to go through a process. That's what will happen with each and every one of the companies, not just, I have to say, in the private sector, but potentially entities in the public sector. We've seen a number of universities, including WITS and UCT and Stellenbosch, also introducing vaccine mandates, all with the purpose of trying to safeguard the health, indeed, of their workforce and those who come onto the premises.
But then do South African businesses have to accommodate employees who refuse to get vaccinated? Because this could be, as a result of a multiplicity of reasons. It could be religious reasons, it could be social, it could even be cultural reasons. And I suppose then that the human rights issue will come into the fore in the consideration of this matter.
You're absolutely right. And indeed, there are carve-outs for people for either faith-based or medical reasons. Each of those need to be looked at, again, individually on their own merits. No doubt every company will have to establish appropriate processes and procedures to be able to guide them and their employees through that engagement process, to the extent that they can't come into the workplace, to try and find them alternative work, to enable them to work from home, if that's practically possible. Only if all of those options have been explored and exhausted will the reality of potentially having to look at those workers leaving the employ of their employers come into focus. And I have to say, the last thing any of us wish to advocate is that. We're very well aware of the need to get the economy working at full capacity. Equally so, the need to...
We seem to have lost Martin Kingston there. He's the chairperson for Business for South Africa, which is advocating for mandatory vaccinations. And it says it expects more court action, to be moved this year as a result of vaccine mandates. All right,